Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Grey's Anatomy, Season 4, Episode 3, Let the Truth Sting. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So as always, we start by recapping the patients. In this episode, the first patient was a mother who brought her son in to the clinic believing that he was on drugs. However, it turns out that his changed behaviors were not due to substances, but because his spinal fluid was backing up into his skull, which was placing pressure on the brain. And after doing like the drug testing, etc., it was only when he started saying nonsensical sentences that they actually looked deeper and almost missed the issue before it caused a problem. Though luckily, when it did cause a problem, Alex went to Shepard, who then gave him the instructions on what to do about it. Second patient was Connie, who had tongue cancer and she came in to need surgery. She'd already had one minor surgery to remove it, and this time she was supposed to also be getting a minor surgery. However, she's informed that the cancer's actually grown and they're going to have to take enough of her tongue to basically render her mute, as they'll only be able to put like a flesh piece in it. However, because Connie's trait is that she really likes to talk, Richard does some research and finds out that there's a surgery that would allow them to put the muscle, like instead of just transferring flesh, transfer a muscle into her mouth so that she would then be able to talk again. And him and Sloane then decide to perform this surgery. However, partway through, they realize that because they've never done this surgery before, they don't know what they're doing. And before things get out of hand, they do call in Shepard, who does manage to save the day and fix things, but afterwards he does scold them for, trying something that they didn't know and how wrong it could have gone had Shepard not stepped in. Last patient was really old guy from previous season's episodes. When they were interns, they'd go into a semi-comatose patient's room to eat lunch and they'd have all their conversations. In this episode, that patient wakes up, and because he was semi-comatose, he does reveal that he heard everything that they said. And he tells Izzy, who's in charge of him, that he woke up today because he wants to die today. And she, of course, does everything she can to prevent that while dealing with him. And he does end up being a little bit of a rude old guy. But in the end, he does get what he wants. As he's about to be discharged, he gets dressed up in his nice suit. He's put in the wheelchair. Izzy comes in to tell him that, she doesn't feel comfortable discharging him, only to find that he did get his wish that he wanted, and he did end up passing away. So now we come to the dramas. First drama is Meredith's been keeping the fact she's sleeping with Derek from Christina. Christina realizes this, and so she decides that Meredith must be protecting her feelings because of Burke, and so she starts playing up fake sadness in order to get sympathy from Meredith, which ends up with Meredith giving her a surgery that she was going to do, which then basically leaves Meredith, when she finds out, a little bit upset about it, but then ultimately, because it's the way that they work, that gets resolved with very little issue. We have the fact that Alex is given an older intern, someone who was a pharmacist for 30 years and decided now he wants to move into being a doctor and has come from California to Seattle to join their program. And at first, Alex doesn't really know what to do with him because obviously they're from two separate generations, so they don't have much in common. Additionally, because Norman is older than him, he at one point likens it to like yelling at his grandfather, like he doesn't feel like he can take a role. And that's one of the reasons that Hunter's case is almost missed, is because the mom assumes the older guy must be the doctor, or the higher ranking doctor, and Norman, having three teenagers apparently, um, decides that, drugs is a likely possibility, so they waste their time with that testing instead of other tests, ultimately almost missing the brain issue that Hunter actually has. Um, but in the end, Alex does end up taking charge. And then Bailey, of course, scolds both Norman and Alex at the end of the day that, he is an intern. There's a reason there's a pecking order, and that's because it saves lives. Which also leaves Bailey to making friends again with Callie. Callie obviously has been struggling with the role of being chief resident and thinks that Bailey would do a better job. And in the end, Bailey decides to offer an olive branch and suggests that they work together as a team to make sure that everything runs smoothly. But Alex is a bit buttsore about, being scolded and having to deal with an older intern. Um, and ultimately then decides to out George to all of the other interns that think he's like some super person, um, by telling them all that he is a repeater, which of course will change their impressions of him. George also finally gets up the courage to tell Callie about Izzy, which of course he wasn't lacking courage in the last episode. Callie begged him not to, but in this one, when he gets home, Callie's sitting there and she says to just tell her. So he does finally tell her about the infidelity with Izzy. And then the last notable piece of drama. Oh, well, no. Richard is going to go on his first date with Adele after his shift at the hospital. Um, as a side note. Anyways, the last main piece of drama to note is between Meredith and Lexi. Because Christina got her surgery, Meredith takes over her time in the pit, which means she's working with Christina's interns, which of course includes Lexi. And her and Lexi butt heads. She then sends Lexi to the clinic where Lexi is complaining to Bailey, who's trying to send her back to Meredith, that, like she can't work with Meredith because Meredith hates her, hates her dad, hated her mother. And, Bailey then talks to Meredith about, Lexi to try to like change her perspective that like, Lexi's mother came in with the hiccups. Meredith was her doctor. Her mother died. There's some understandable reasons why she might have questions about this, and she is ultimately not just an intern but also her sister. So Meredith then decides to take Susan's case file, bring it to Lexi, and walk Lexi through everything that they did and all of the complications that happened, while also telling her that she was very fond of her mother, um, which is a step forward with regards to their sibling bond. And I believe that's everything of note that happened in this episode. So now that we've been reminded about the episode, it's time to rank the episode. As always, we'll start with the mostly objective ranking list, followed then by the personal ranking list. So our single episode supporting character introductions, we have Connie Williams and Hunter Chapman as our two main patients. Connie Williams, of course, is the one with the tongue surgery. Hunter Chapman, the one with the fluid in the brain. They're worth 1 point each. We then have 2 points for our multi-episode supporting character introduction, Norman Shales, who doesn't last long in the series, but personally I see nothing wrong with Norman, and I see nothing wrong with starting a new career older in age. However, I don't necessarily think it makes the most sense to choose a career that takes a very large amount of education when you are close to retirement, because by the time you finish educating into that career, you'll probably be retiring right away. So it does seem a little bit pointless. Like if you're going to make a career change, you'd think maybe something that takes like 2 to 3 years education and then you can actually start the job. Whereas with the doctor, you have to go through all of the internship, then residency, then, specializing and all of those things. And I'm pretty sure pharmacists pay well too, but he does seem like a very nice old man, though I can understand the misgivings that, Alex has with it just not making sense that somebody at that age would go for surgeon because, again, like by the time he's through all of the levels of education that are needed for that, he probably will be at or past retirement age, but everybody has the right to do what they want. Then we have multi-episode supporting character development, which is Charlie Yost, which was the really old guy who wakes up from his coma and then does pass away within the same episode, and that's also worth 2 points. We then have the multi-season main character growth, and I feel like this is Meredith opening up to Lexi in a way that she hasn't before, going over the mother's death certificate or death note, as she called it. So I was just thinking about the anime there. But, basically her record of what happened on the day that she died, like her patient record, essentially. Um, and I know that because this is a rewatch, that they do form like a really amicable relationship in the future going forward. So I like that this is like the first step into that. And that's why I'm counting it as like the character growth. And that's worth 4 points, bringing us to 10 points. But this episode did have some negatives. Starting with the supporting relationship regression or breakup, obviously, George has now confessed his infidelity to Callie at her request, something that she'd already sensed for several episodes at this point, and now he's officially told her that he stepped out of their marriage with Izzy of all people, which I think is even worse because there's physical and emotional attachment there, which no cheating is good cheating. All cheating should be zero tolerance. But I think emotional cheating is probably just that tiniest sliver worse than just physical cheating, though both cheating is bad. And again, zero tolerance. Anyways, negative messaging or behavior. We have first the Richard Sloan surgery. The fact that they wanted to try a new surgery isn't new on the series. There's been times where they've attempted surgeries that they had little experience in or that they hadn't done before, but everybody has to do something for the first time. Everyone learns, does their research, and then has to try something for the first time. So that in and of itself, I don't think is a bad thing that they wanted to try a surgery that they hadn't done before or that was new to them. However, they did not do their research properly. They did not practice on anything. They did not ensure that they had a full and complete understanding of the surgery that they were undertaking. And as a result of that, halfway through the surgery with this patient, they froze up, had no idea how to continue the surgery, and had Shepard not been there for them to call, could have cost this patient a lot. And I just think that that's incredibly unethical as a doctor. Like I said, I don't like everyone has to do a surgery for the first time. Everyone has to try something for the first time. But before you try it on an actual patient that's relying on you and has intrinsic trust in you because you are a doctor and authority figure, make sure you've done your proper research. Make sure you've maybe practiced in the medical field on a cadaver or on like a model of some sort. Like, make sure that you have a complete and thorough understanding of what you are trying for this first time because playing with people's lives is not okay. I took 2 points for that. And then the second negative messaging or behavior is Alex being super petty and deciding that because he was having a bad day, he had to ruin someone else's not just that day, but like potentially year because George still has to be with the other interns for the entire year. And they were all thinking of him as like a rock star, you know, that intern, the go-to guy, the super intern, because they thought it was his first year as well, only for Alex to out him as a repeater, which of course changes everything. And once that information's out, you can't get it back. So I think that it was a really, really shitty thing for Alex to do to out George as a repeater. And I mean, Alex from the start was always an a-hole character, but I feel like he was starting to make a lot of progress. Like we hadn't seen real asshole-ish behavior from him for a while. And well, he's back. And honestly, I'm not sad about that because I do think somebody needs to be a jerk to bring out the drama. But again, I think it was just very poor taste. So -2 points for that as well, which makes this a 4 out of 10 episode. And that brings the mostly objective ranking to in first, A Change Is Gonna Come, Love/Addiction, and then this episode in third, Let the Truth Sting. Personal ranking for this episode, I liked the episode, but I didn't find it as engaging as some of the other episodes have been. I liked the characters, but the patients weren't the most compelling. I mean, I did like Connie and her friends' relationship. Um, I did think Alex got to have his hero moment with finding out how to save Hunter because, as Derek said, like he's trapped in surgery and, Hunter has like maybe 10 minutes and then he's going to die. So he then gave Alex the way to save him. I think Norman's a nice guy. I did think, Alex's attitude towards him was just kind of rude. Like I said, Alex did take a little bit of a step back into his a-holery. Um, again, outing George, poor taste. I don't like George and Izzy as a couple, and I don't think they even really. I had no recollection of them even having this fling moment, so I don't think that they end up super tight going forward. Um, I do think like George and Kelly were doomed from the start, to be honest. I only ever put them as a supporting relationship because they were doomed from the start. He was not overly into her. She kept pushing. He grasped on because I guess he didn't think he could get anybody else. And then, his dad died. You make poor decisions. They got married. Like, I don't think he ever really loved her or shared feelings with her to the level she did. So I'm not surprised that it's ending poorly. But I do feel bad because, well, I think she deserved better. And I've never liked George the character. So there's that. I did find the really old guy suck kind of funny, especially since once he dies, you know, Izzy makes them all say something nice, but they're like, he was asleep the entire times we were in the room. So like, what are we supposed to say? Um, and they just kind of pull something from the ether to say, which doesn't really mean much because it's literally things like, well, he didn't snore a lot or fart a lot or he took his meds or he let me practice on him or hey, he survived this so and so many surgeries. Like just very minor things. And yeah, like there was a lot that happened. Like when I did the summary, it was a long summary. There was a lot of drama that happened, but none of it was big drama. None of it was super engaging or shocking or something that we didn't see coming. And that's why I decided ultimately to give it a 6 because I did like the episode. I liked a lot of moments in the episode. I liked a lot of the characters in the episode, but it just didn't speak to me. It didn't really engage me. And there were also things that I disliked. So 6 seemed fair. And that brings the list so far to in first, A Change Is Gonna Come, Love and Addiction, and then this episode is in third place, Let the Truth Sting. Bringing us now to the series ranking so far. Season 1 is in first place on the mostly objective ranking, followed by Season 2 and Season 3. Season 4 so far has a score of 20 out of a possible 150. Personal ranking list is pretty much the reverse. Season 3 in first, followed by Season 2 and Season 1. And Season 4 so far has a score of 23 out of a possible 150. But with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Grey's Anatomy Season 4, Episode 3, Let the Truth Sting. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.